And that brings us to our discussion agenda, item 22, locally designed subject area course application band with physical education, Exhibit I. I don't know who's going, Dr. Juliano, Mr. Juliano. I've just promoted you, Dr. Juliano.
Thank you, Mr. Gant. Mr. Gant and board members, I'd like to draw your attention to Exhibit I. Exhibit I today, we're discussing a request to create a locally designed subject area course to submit an application to the State Department of Education for a course entitled Band with Physical Education. On May 18, 2018, Governor McMaster signed Senate Bill 302 into law, permitting school districts to allow students to earn the physical education credit required for graduation through marching band. Our band directors have reached out to us after listening to families and parents, and they have requested that we submit an application to the State Department of Education to create this course for School District 5. We formed a committee with the 3 band directors at each high school. The physical education lead for our district also participated in the committee, with Beth Boland, our health and physical education coordinator for the district, and as well with Tammy Richardson, our coordinator for visual and performing arts for the district. And then at the time, Dr. Ross, our director of secondary education, was on this committee. This committee reviewed and created an application based upon state standards. So they took all the physical education standards and incorporated them into their band programming so they could make sure that they were covering all of the material. That is part of the application that they have given to us. All of our high school principals have reviewed the application as well and are in support of taking this forward. So tonight, I bring to you the application for band with physical education. If you approve through this process, then we send that to the State Department of Education for their approval. And then once the State Department approves that, then we would look forward to policy updates based upon the change. The reason that it needs to go to the State Department of Education is because this course would count for high school graduation credit. If it did not involve that high school graduation credit, the required credit, then we could just do a locally board-approved course. But since this is for graduation credit that is mandatory for students, that's why there's an extra step to take it to the State Department of Education. At this time, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Mr. Cates.
I certainly recognize the physical nature of marching band. I see often at Irmo our band students on the hot blacktop late into the evening before our fall sports have even started, and recognize the hard work. My question is, ask a question and voice a concern. My question is, are the standards adequately covered as far as the health education component, and who will teach that component if this is being done by the band director?
There is a small component, the CPR and AED component that's required, that will be taught by a certified health teacher at the school. So the physical education teachers will help assist with that component of this, but everything else with the physical education requirements can be taught and covered through the band, with the band teacher and through their content. So the only time that the physical education teacher will have to assume some responsibilities for the AED and CPR certification.
And my concern, and let me say I will support the application, but I do feel compelled to voice my concern as a parent of one that aspires to teach physical education. I often think sometimes we perpetuate the notion that the only thing involved in physical education is to roll out the balls and raise their pulse rate. And we recognize, I think we need to recognize that there's a bigger component than that. And I just will trust you and the district to make sure those lifelong learning skills that are also taught in physical education are being incorporated, and we can document, not just create standards or a lesson plan or we're going to count this minutes or that minute, but I hope we'll be able to document and provide evidence that instruction is indeed happening. And while, again, I certainly intend to support the application and trust the judgment of you and all those that have worked so hard on this, I do want to say I appreciate the skill set of our physical education teachers. I respect their certification and that they are the subject matter experts. And the other concern that goes along with that is, where does it stop? How many combined type courses will we create just because the folks downtown punted it to the district to decide what to do instead of making the difficult decision at that address rather than this one. So that's my commentary, I guess, more than my question.
I didn't hear a question.
No, I asked a question and then stated a concern. So.
Okay.
We certainly support that decision. I mean, the physical education teachers do great work throughout our district, and this should hopefully not devalue what they do whatsoever, because physical activity is an important component of life. So we want to make sure that those components are covered here, which is why we wanted to make sure we had a physical education teacher on this committee as well as Ms. Boland as the representative as well. But we certainly agree with that.
Mr. Cates, thank you for taking that little jab as a moment of humor. And I just found out some very important information. Mr. Juliano himself, our director of instruction, is a former PE teacher.
All right.
You can bet he's going to keep the rubber to the road on this. So, Ms. Hammond, I'm going to you. You don't even have to ask a question.
Well,
it's not a requirement of.
I have a question. I'm going to put my student hat on here, and a parent hat. Will the student get dual credit? Because band is certainly a credit, and then they would get a credit for PE, or is it combined with, and I'm the student taking it, and I'm going to get one credit, 2 for the price of 1. How does it work?
It's 1 credit. So now we have some students that would just be taking band class, and then we have other students that would be taking band with physical education.
I got you. So the band, let's say I'm the student that takes the band with the PE, I only get 1 credit.
Correct.
And it'll say band/PE.
Band with physical education, that's correct.
Okay. How many other schools do this?
How many other schools?
Other schools.
How
Do
many
we
other
have
school
any?
districts?
Yeah, I meant, school districts, pardon. But I just want to see how, if there's, any success of this, and how many kids really think this is great and do it.
I can't quote the exact number, but when we and this committee got together, our band directors had researched through their network.
Right.
They researched through other band directors in other districts throughout our state. And actually, our application, they were able to take from applications from other districts and kind of tweak those to make them District 5 and to make sure we incorporate exactly what we want and the expectations we have here in District 5. But we did have a chance to use a guide from other districts across the state. So I don't know the exact number, but I do know there were several that they looked at.
Well, this kind of goes along with Mr. Cates' little statement with us, because, I understand your concern. What was the real goal to do this? Is it to give the kid more, because we know that our PE teachers are doing great. That's a point he made that I think well made. So is it and then it's not going to be 2 credits in 1, which I could see that. If I could get band and PE in 1 snap, that's 2 for me if I'm a student. So was it, what guided the goal to it, to make this, to have this, I guess?
Well, one of the arguments that we heard certainly was that if you are taking the physical education requirement and you're also taking band on top of that, now you don't have the opportunity to take some other courses that they'd like to take.
It's giving them more space to pick something they choose.
Correct.
Good answer. Good answer.
Great answer.
Good answer.
Ms. Gardner,
I
you have the floor.
I
You
have
don't
a few
have to ask.
questions about that. I also actually have a comment. I have a Chapin High School band student, and he's had to take online classes in order to fit in PE because he has, 4 of his years he's had band. So that's why it's not. I think that's part of it, and it is very rigorous. I think it's the reason. But that being said, marching band is only 1 semester. So, but you're going to give them a whole year credit. So that's interesting to me
That is.
that it's going to be, I mean, I am a proponent of this, so I agree with it, but I am surprised that we're going to be okay, because I know that the other semester, they are sitting in chairs and maybe moving their stands and their instruments, but it is not PE.
Right.
Just growing up myself in a different state, we had to take 4 years to qualify for 1 year, but it was dual credit. See, so that
That's-
would be the difference. But I just wondered, did you have a discussion about what they have to do that second semester to still qualify for a physical education? Did you, I mean, was that discussed at all?
Absolutely. You're spot on with that. That's something we certainly discussed. That was one of the key areas that we brought up to the band directors. And we said, we know marching bands, certainly there's a lot of physical activity taking place. But the second semester, like you're mentioning, how are we going to ensure that our students are being physically active and utilizing the standards? So that's why they really went back and zeroed in to say, for these students that are taking this credit, band with physical education, they're going to have these components for those students. So they will be implementing those physical activity standards. When some of the other students are just taking band, that second semester may not be doing those same activities.
Okay, and I have a follow-up question, because right now, and I don't know about this about every school, I need to ask, I should probably ask you. Right now at Chapin, I know marching band is an after-school activity. They have band, and it's symphonic and concert, and they sit and play, and then they do 2 to 3 hours after school every day. And so would that have to change with this, or were they still allowed to have the same, they can still play, and then they're just required to do after-school marching band? That would cover this? Like, they're not going to have to change their curriculum in class in order to do, or are they?
They're just going to have to make sure they incorporate some of the physical education standards in class, correct, for the students that are taking march and band with, or band with march with physical education.
Yeah.
Sorry. So yes, they have to change those components. But for Chapin High School, for example, nothing's really going to change except for those students that are taking this course. They will have to implement those physical education standards.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Great question.
Mr. Gann, if there are no other questions. Mr. Juliano, are there other certified positions that, for lack of a better word, teach outside of their certification within our district? In other words, would we allow other certified personnel to teach a subject matter that they are not certified in?
I think that would be a Dr. Jakes question specifically, but to my knowledge, I'm not aware of that. But I'd have to pose that to Dr. Jakes if she had different information.
We have a required credentials document that's produced by the South Carolina Department of Education, and it spells out the areas of certification that are required or that are acceptable for each particular area. And so some particular courses can span certification areas. For example, it may be advisable for someone with an English certificate to teach a theater class. There are just a number of those types of variations. So it does go back to State Department approval. It ties in with accreditation, and the Office of Human Resources always ensures that the appropriate certification is there. So the long and short of it is that the State Department governs what those areas of certification are, and typically it's tied within the primary areas of certification that you're aware of, and in most cases, it's pretty easy to discern.
Well, I appreciate your hard work, and again, I stated I would support this, and I'm not trying to change the opinion of the district or any other board member. I just want to voice, and I think you here and know me well enough to know that, I just am concerned that we're going to, let's not lose focus on the skill set that needs to be taught, and I look forward to celebrating with those students as they begin to enroll in this class, and we see some of the creative ways that they're going to meet the standards, because that's what our teachers and students do. They rise to the occasion and surprise us every day. So thank you, and thank you for hearing my concerns. That's all I have, Mr. Gann.
One more
Ms.
question.
Gardner.
Sorry, I have one more question. Did they contemplate possibly making this just a semester class and then making it half a credit, and then that way they did 2 years of marching band and it would come out as a 1 PE credit? I mean, instead of having to like load our band directors with teaching physical education the second semester when they should be concerned about their, I mean, did the band directors, was that a mention, or did they didn't care? They were okay with that type of thing? I just know how busy ours is, and I think, man, I can't believe he said, sure, I'll do something extra. So, you know,
Actually, to be honest with you, the band directors were the driving force behind this,
Oh, yeah.
based upon feedback they received from parents. You'll notice we didn't rush to this. May 2018 is when it was passed. We took this school year to examine it, and the feedback that we received from our band directors, from our families, was they really want this opportunity. They know the legislator passed it, and they really wanted it. So our band directors actually were for the extra workload that it may be on them.
but nobody mentioned, like, I would be curious if we asked them now if they would prefer, because another, you know, retention, they'd have 2 years of marching band students instead of just one before they jumped out and didn't do it again because they checked it off their list. So that's just, I didn't know if they had talked about that at all or not. I'm going to have to go ask my band director, I guess, because it just seems like that would be a better way of doing it for everybody involved, in my opinion, but, you know, I don't know if it was even discussed. That was the question I was
Sure.
asking, so.
And I know they discussed it at that meeting. I could get more information for you to bring back, because I was not a part of that discussion, but I know it was discussed based upon what was reported back to me. I just don't want to put words in their mouth
Well,
about
yeah.
exactly what they said.
Yeah, I just didn't know if, they talked about it and said, absolutely not, we'd rather do it this way. But that's, okay, I'll talk to them myself.
Ms.
Thanks.
Hammond?
One quick question, because this might go to some of your questions. Dr. Melton, what is the PE requirement at the high school and middle school level? You know, what's our, that they have to take so many credits up?
Yes,
or
ma'am.
up
I'm
here?
actually going to toss that to Mr. Giuliano because that's his responsibility now as Chief Instructional Officer, the number of credits and Carnegie units that students must earn. So I get to pass that baton, Mrs. Hammond.
But I'm curious, because PE is one of the things, I know especially with elementary and middle, that kids do need a certain, and people really lobby for it, and we need it with the obesity. But what's the requirement? Because to me, it goes to this question, too.
They are required to take that 1.0 credit in high school, and then
That's
also,
all? One?
That's all,
and then, yeah, correct.
1 year.
So to me, that drives this, Ms. Garner, in some ways, you know, because it may be, like you're saying, it allows the student to get two in one thing and be able to, you know, get rid of the PE. I can see a lot of parents, and a lot of, I hate to say this, a lot of kids don't, well, a lot of girls mainly, they don't like to dress up and do PE, which is sad because they need it. But I'm just trying to think from your question that it may be, that it was really something that the public wants and students and parents want because it frees up the time.
Right, and many of the kids who are in the marching band are they want to do it, and they do it for 4 years, and so they march
love
for a
it,
whole
yeah.
semester 4 times.
I
And
get
so
it.
they figure that should be good enough for 1 credit.
Yeah.
But it's not dual credit, so, yeah.
Thanks.
All right, thank you all. Great discussion. I think we probably need to move now to our item 23, 2019, 2020 capital budget. Mr. Scott Carlin is here. Mr. Carlin, come on down.
Mr. Gant, members of the board, while he makes his way down, I would like to just say one thing about the capital budget. As a reminder or as information for our new board members, that this is a 5-year proposal and is based on the projected amount of funds we have available at the current millage rate. Although this is a 5-year plan, an updated proposal will be presented annually for your approval. And without any further ado, I will turn it over to Mr. Carlin to get into the nuts and bolts of our proposal for this year.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richardson. Mr. Chairman, Dr. Melton, board members, thank you again for the opportunity to present our capital budget for the coming year. I did want to begin by talking about, first of all, the capital budget is largely, approximately 70% of the budget involves maintaining and renewing our physical plant, and about 30% of the budget is allocated for technology requirements. And again, as Mr. Richardson said, we'll be bringing you a refreshed plan every year, and what we are asking for this year is just the current year, the current proposed year, but we also give you 4 additional years for planning purposes and what we're planning. Okay. Did want to talk a little bit about a couple of projects that were approved in last year's budget. They are both located at Irmo High School. One was to construct a softball and concession stand. The other one was to remodel or to improve the training program at the high school. Because of some Title IX issues that arose, we are attempting to address those with both programs, but it required some additional work. As far as the press box and concessions, we're also going to be looking at dugouts. We're going to be looking at seating capacities. We're going to be looking at the backstop area as well. As far as the training room, we had initially intended to locate the new training program in a particular part of the activities building at Irmo High, but after meeting with the new principal and her staff, it became apparent that it made a lot of sense to relocate the existing art program, which was previously located in the athletics area, back up into the academic building, and then to move the training program into that space that will be vacated by moving the art program. Just like with all our capital budgets, you know, we present you the budget, and we hope that as we complete our projects, some dollars are going to fall out from those projects that are left over, and so we propose to use some remaining dollars from previous budget years to address that increased scope. Any questions on that?
I have one on Irma.
Ms. Hammond.
The remodel of the training room and the activities building, that's not the new area that's like the weight room and all, the brand
No,
new-
ma'am. No,
Yeah,
it is not. It is not in the field house.
Right, because I know we just did that. But
Correct.
in other words, is it right, if I'm in Irmo High, and here's the cafeteria, is that area that's the hall right behind the cafeteria that used to be the art room? Or is that's not where you're talking
Okay.
about?
Do you, Ms. Hammond? Do you know where? Well, you know where the large gymnasium is, with
Yeah.
the large set of seating that goes up
Right.
towards the main building.
Yeah,
There's an addition that was put on the back of that building that housed a practice gym,
yeah.
an art room, and at one time it also included the wrestling program.
So the art room's going to be where now?
Well, the art room is currently in the part of the addition that's closest to the track, okay, and the softball field. That's where the art program is right now. What we're proposing to do is move the art program back up into the first floor of the main building, essentially down the hall from guidance.
So in talking about the Title IX, do the girls have equitable training area too for the girls?
Well, the training program will be located such that both female programs and male programs can take advantage of that,
Okay.
that training area.
All right, that was my big thing, to be sure where this meant.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Lovelace.
I have, Mr. Carlin.
Sir.
I have a series of questions here. I hope
Okay.
I'm allowed to do this. But
Mr. Lovelace, let me ask you this. Are there questions that are coming up later? It might be good to have his presentation,
okay.
or as they come up during the presentation. I think that'd be great, just like Ms. Hammond's questions.
Yeah.
But,
No, I'll yield the floor to.
okay. Let's just, I think it'd be more meaningful if when he touches that spot, you raise your hand, I promise you I'll call him. Mr. Cates.
Because it's to this slide, and I think Mr. Carlin asked for questions regarding this slide. It might be helpful wherever we list training room to say athletic training room.
Right, that's.
It's not,
Yes, sir.
it's not a physical activity room or a weight room. We're talking about where our student athletes receive treatment from a certified athletic trainer. And the Title IX issue was not the size of the space, it was the location of the space, being that the current weight room, that there's equipment in there that if I'd have attended Irmo, would have used in high school as a athlete. Well, y'all, that's new equipment. I mean, no. The issue with the Title IX was it's in the middle of the men's locker room that our female athletes were having to come in, basically into the men's locker room to access the athletic training room. And this arrangement also, while it did require you to relocate the art room, my understanding of that that space now is, already has an external entrance, so that when student athletes are coming for treatment before or after hours, it secures the building. They can come in and out of that one room. And when they're coming back from an event and need to unload equipment into the athletic training room, they're able to access that without coming into the building proper. And it was already had some of the plumbing and drain required for the wet part of that, and it just gave you the flexibility to do a proper training room and not move a fitness lab that's highly used as well.
Yes, sir.
Is that how we kind of got to where we are?
It is, and of course, the existing training room is a postage stamp right now. I mean, they can't accommodate what they need, and this proposed space will provide size-wise what is required.
Thank you.
Continue on, Will.
Okay. All right. So what you see before you, and hopefully it's a little bit clearer on your screen itself, is our proposed capital budget for the coming year. Now, this does show you the 5-year plan, but we are going to be asking you to approve just the FY 2019-2020 plan, which is in column B there. Largely, this plan is really all about our very large facility systems in our schools. And those, for the most part, are going to be roofs and heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. You will occasionally see another project that we've inserted for a particular lead, like last year we did with the 2 projects from Irmo High School. There's also another non-HVAC or roof-related project for Irmo High School on line 23 there to address some restroom issues. But largely, what you're going to see in these plans is the HVAC and the roofing systems, because we know if we take care of those, and hopefully we have some dollars that will fall out when these projects are completed, we can do other things with those. For our newer board members, just to give you an idea, when some of those dollars do fall out, last year we brought back to you and showed you that, if I can find it, we had some dollars that fell out, and we were able to replace or upgrade some of our HVAC control systems district-wide. We are replacing all the windows at Dutch Fork High School that were, to put it bluntly, inadequate when they were initially put in. They were the wrong type system for that school. We were able to install a car rider loop at Harbison West Elementary School. And then we replaced sound systems in the gymnasium or mini theater areas in 4 of our elementary schools. So that is why the plan largely focuses on these big projects to make sure that we take care of the essential infrastructure, and then we try to take care of the other things as dollars become available. So the projects that we've proposed for this coming year include the third and final phase of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning replacement at Dutch Fork Middle School. The area of this project is the activities building. It's the back building behind the academic building. You'll also note that we've included a statement there about ceilings and lighting. One of the things that we discovered was when you're replacing an HVAC system, particularly when you're replacing duct and getting above the ceiling and all that, it just makes sense while you're doing all that to go replace the ceiling, clean up everything above the ceiling, particularly the code violations that seem to always be above a ceiling system. And we also have been practicing replacing our existing lighting with the most current, efficient lighting, which is LED. And that's, case in point, we're standing here tonight. We finished the last phase, the third and final phase of HVAC replacement at Lake Murray this last summer, and we replaced the ceilings and lighting at the time, and all your lights in here are LED. Okay, Dutch Fork Middle. Moving on, Dutch Fork High School. We're proposing the second phase of roofing replacement for the main building, and of course, that's the original construction for Dutch Fork High School. There were some additions that were put onto the school, and we will not be including those portions in any of our current suggested replacements. Irmo High School, HVAC. This is a portion of the west, what we call the west wing. If you're facing Irmo High School from St. Andrews Road, it would be the far right building. And it's a portion of that building that we're proposing replacing the HVAC. In all our budgets, we include funds required for insurance costs. We include some monies in there for activity bus replacement, Dave Wiseman's fleet. We also include some money in there for addressing our maintenance fleet as well. And then we include some dollars for school identified needs, things that the principals bring to our attention that will help them get through that current year with some of their needs. And then finally, we set aside $3 million for various technology needs throughout the district. So that is our proposed budget for this year, and I will be glad to attempt to address any questions you may have.
Mr. Carlin, the request from the board, and they're trying to open this up right now if we do it, but in our future presentations, I know this will come back to us a couple of times. If there's any way, and I know there's got to be a way, take this particular slide and get it to a readable size, we would really appreciate
I
it.
was going to say, just from an administrative,
Right,
Yeah.
we can
Yes,
see
I see it better on
we need a
Help.
sharper.
I may need to consult with Janie Garris's crew to
Absolutely.
get some,
Maybe invest some
get
of
some
that technology
skill.
dollars.
Yes, sir.
I can tell you, we appreciate you and we trust you, but we can't really read this. No.
And I
Help us.
apologize for that. Would it be helpful for me to read you the dollar amounts, or can you read
No.
those?
Or you can make it out.
The
got it?
handout has it.
It's in the handout, if you keep turning pages.
Yeah, the handout's
Yeah.
good,
It's the
y'all.
same
I can read
noise
the
as on
handout.
Second,
Okay.
okay, further back.
Yeah,
Yeah, there should be
Same
the
thing?
presentation, and then there should be a,
It's that one, right, Mr.
Oh,
Gates?
my gosh.
So you have it in here, you just didn't show it.
and it wasn't a dirty trick, I promise.
It's right here.
Have a shout out for Ms. Gardner. Great find, great catch.
I apologize for that. I
just
should
wanna
I
know
should have
how
made
she
you aware of
could
that.
tell that
yeah.
that little tiny thing was the same thing as
I think those
this.
are younger eyes. obviously.
Probably.
She told me about it 5 minutes ago.
I saw it, I just didn't know if it was the same thing.
I
Well,
didn't
I
either.
had
All right,
it,
now,
guys.
Mr. Carlin, why are you wasting paper?
I had it.
Fun in here already, and you put this in here. Come on.
Yes, sir.
We got to get, Dr. Melton, you
We
take care
got
of
to.
that. can't you?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Lovelace, read any of your questions?
Yes, he answered several of them, so that's a good thing.
Great.
Prior capital budgets accounted for technology. They had line items for computers and cameras and smart boards and furniture and projectors and netbooks, et cetera, in there. And yet, this budget just has a $3 million lump sum in there. And what I was wondering was how do you, how is that divvied up to be equitable between the different schools if it's just a lump sum? The way I think I saw prior budgets was that each school had requests in for different things in there. So that's what I was wondering, how that was going to be equitably divided.
Sir, I would love for you to take that.
Mr. Lovelace, the focus of most of our technology dollars over the last, let's say, couple of years has been focused mainly on getting our infrastructure in place, when we're still doing a lot of work in that area too. But a lot of the focus of where these dollars are going now are on the refreshing of the one-to-one devices that we currently have. What we've done is we've changed the way, excuse me, that we're doing that. Students, when they begin middle school, for instance, they'll be given a device that'll stay with them from 6th grade through 8th grade, and then they'll get a new device, obviously, as they enter high school, and they'll keep that through the end of high school. But what we tried to do is make sure that we're refreshing those every year. So we're buying a portion of those to replace every year, too. So that's how, I guess, we're answering the equity part. Hopefully that answered your question.
What I was wondering about, okay, let's suppose that 3 years ago, we put a new computer system in School A, and then last year, we put a computer system in School B. Okay, as technology progresses, on a fast-paced basis, how do we know that the right amount of money is going to go back to School A to get replacements done when we don't specify that? And that's just a generic question in general.
Well, that's a great question, and we do try to do that. As a matter of fact, as part of this focus on technology in the last 2 years, I believe it was 3 summers ago, we actually replaced just about every computer in this district at every school. So we had everybody on a level playing field to start out. So it's been a little bit easier for us to manage replacement of these things so that we're not having one school with older equipment than others.
One of the other things, Mr. Richard, while you were on the subject, I was just wondering, looking back through these things, that it looks like that we set a $10 million amount, okay? Did we inflation adjust any of this? Because, I mean, if we were looking at a budget from, say we were in year 5 of 5 years ago plan, did we inflation adjust? You know, why are we just setting $10 million, you know, as the supposed limit? I mean, is that something that is just?
That's been in the ballpark of where we've been. Actually, we've actually gotten less than $10 million the last 2 or 3 years. It's been somewhere in the neighborhood of $9.5 million that we've gotten. But we go for the $10 million a year plan. And if our assessment grows and obviously we bring in more money with the same millage, we will adjust this later on. But right now, we have yet in the last couple of years to reach the $10 million.
Okay. And I think I asked you before, you know, on a completed basis, I think in my first board meeting, you know, was there a separation, and I think y'all have alluded to it, that when funds are not spent for better, maybe you got better bids or something, and you only spent $9,000 instead of $10,000, let's say, on an object, okay, and that additional $1,000 goes back into a fund, I think you heard Mr. Carlin say, so that we could introduce additional projects that we didn't really anticipate at this time. How does that process work? Is there a capital budgeting model that's set up that has the next project down, or do we skip over and get one that we can afford? You know, say you had a $500,000 project was the next one in line, and you had on the next, you know, next 3 down was a $2,000 project. Is that what we're doing?
I don't know that we do anything quite that sophisticated, but, you know, we've, and we build in $500,000 a year too, contingency. So that's how, you know, just for everybody's information, that's how a lot of times we may have something come in under bid or under budget, excuse me, would leave us some money to spend on some other things. But we also build in $500,000 a year for those items that we can't anticipate. So we always hope to have dollars available at the end of each capital budget year. It's a constant process with us. We're identifying areas, but just for instance, I think one of the things he brought up was the Dutch Fork High School window replacement. That was something that, quite frankly, wasn't on our radar until it was brought to our attention last summer, maybe a year and a half ago.
Within the last 2 years.
And quite frankly, that one was one that we thought if there was any way we could fund it and not have to go back through this process of coming back to the board in a year from now to fund, that we decided that probably best move forward with something like that. The same would be true with the Harbison West traffic loop that he was referring to. But I don't know that we do anything quite as sophisticated as what you were asking.
Well, I guess at the prior board meeting, when I asked you, what I was asking about was committed cost. Okay, if you know that you're going to have, you know, some expenditures that are coming up, and the cost that we have committed, do you look at that to move that forward and say, okay, well, I know that say January, I've only got committed cost of so much, and it should be half that. You know, it should have been half of the total, but hey, I'm going to have some money left over. So the committed cost we could see in another column, so that we could see what we're liable to have left, so that we could make some decisions as far as, you know, what the next item down that we could afford to get in this year versus, you know.
Could we do something like that? Yes, but it would be difficult to do it with everything because we haven't obviously received bids on everything that we talk about here. But could we do that? Could we? And we try to do that on every 2-3 months. We try to come back with a capital budget report.
That's how we in the construction industry know where our costs are, because we do that because we have to gauge where we are at a certain point in the project see whether we're making or losing money, and if we're losing money, we got to do some drastic things, you know. So anyway, that was the question that I was asking you before. Anyway, I just wanted to clarify what I was talking about. I think that would be a big help. I really do.
Okay.
If you could look into that. The only other thing I had was, I noticed there were only a few roof replacements in here.
Yes, sir.
And I know, a contractor built a lot of things with flat roofs, and, I know that that's, that's one of the big maintenance items that you really have to, is that realistic to only have that few roof items that, projected 5 years out?
We've got a whole host of planned replacements for HVAC and roofs. I think it may be just because of this sliver of 5 years that, because if you carry it out a few more years, there's a lot more roofs that get populated in there.
I mean, you have to replace the roof and the HVAC at the same time because of curbs and so forth and roof.
Yeah, and what we try to do there, Mr. Lovelace, is of course, where we can, we always try to go replace the HVAC system and then come back and do the roof. So you're not cutting into a new roof to do HVAC stuff.
That was the point I was trying to make. I mean, if you're replacing the HVAC, it's, and you can't come back 2 years from now and replace the curbs.
Right.
Because, you'll be cutting into a new roof or so forth, voiding the warranties and so forth. But anyway, I
Yes,
just
sir.
wanted to know, does that need to be carried out a little bit further so we could see, what the real plan there is?
Well,
that-
we're
what I'm saying?
internally, we're looking at more years down the road.
Yeah.
But it gets really interesting with our current plan to make each year that $10 million work to try to, move the chess pieces around so you
Yes, sir. I understand. So, I mean,
kind of stay within that 10.
I was just trying to understand, the long range, that we're not just talking about roofs and we're not just talking
No.
about air conditioning, we're talking about the system, so we got to do both.
Correct. And that's, you bring up a good point that I did not mention. That is, this plan does not by any stretch of the imagination address all our needs. What this plan is attempting to do is address the critical ones, that if you mess up roofs and you mess up HVAC, then everything else is.
That's right.
Can we wait a few years on carpet and paint and, all that kind of stuff? Yeah, we can. And hopefully, if I've budgeted this well and we stay in the black all the time, then some of those extra dollars are going to fall. We're going to be able to do some floors and things like that, but not at the expense of the critical ones.
Yes, sir. Okay, that's all.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cates and then Ms. Hammond.
I believe help me understand how we got to this place, but I assume and would expect that the reason we're using the $10 million in the 5-year projection was direction from a previous board to say that we want to commit, we're going to commit to $10 million a year, and we've asked Mr. Richardson for you to bring that to us in a kind of a 5-year forecast, and we're looking at this year. We'll ultimately approve the 2019-20, and what happens in those 4 years may look different when we see this next year.
Guaranteed that it will look different. I mean, obviously it's fluid. I think every year, I don't know that we've come in here 2 years in a row and given you the same.
No.
Prices change, obviously, in the market we're in right now. Prices have escalated, obviously, so that's really caused us to, if you'll compare what you see here as compared to what we'd approved last year, you will see that we've changed a good bit on pricing on some of these projects that we're proposing.
Ms. Hammond.
I got really, tell me if I'm wrong, I got really excited at line 23, renovate the restrooms at Irmo High in the main building. But if I'm reading it right, this is just 2019-20. You don't plan to do that till 2023?
And that would be some major internal renovations
sad.
to those restrooms. I have become aware that
Yeah.
there are some needs right now.
Very. And
So what I'm proposing that we do in the meantime, before we get to a project like this, would be, let's go do some cosmetic things. Let's do some paint.
thank you. And I didn't see any on line 40, which is Irmo Middle, but that main bathroom that's in the, like if you're in the cafeteria, so it's the one that's, you just go straight back in there. I mean, pieces of the floor. I mean, it works. I brought this up before. I'm not saying that plumbing doesn't work. I'm saying it's cosmetically, surely it would not take a lot of money to make it a more nice and pleasant bathroom for children to go to.
Yeah, I think we can do some cosmetic things
Please
this
do.
summer in both those schools, but we got some pretty significant needs at both those locations.
Well, I
And they're
appreciate
not
it.
going to be solved with this budget.
Well, I saw that there, and so I got excited, and then my eyes didn't see a bit of money under there this year, and I had to go way over there to even find it.
Yes, ma'am.
So I would really appreciate it if you looked at that. And then, Mr. Gant, I guess this is the place I could say this because I can't be much money. At Irmo High School, the W.C. Hawkins sign, I think and Mr. Cates will know more about it. I know that they're working on getting they've had some more advertisements, they're working on getting it working. But right now, and I talked to Dr. Hardy, they just put this sort of cloth sign up there that the wind knocks down. And if you've driven by there, it looks really bad. And even though that's not a real important thing like to students but it's an image of Irmo High School. And I don't know how many thousands of cars go by there daily. And I've had more people ask me about that, and it's a sore spot to me. And I've talked to Irmo High teachers and the Irmo High administrators, and they fix it. When the wind comes along, they go and try to get it back up. But it just looks really, really bad. I mean, we either need till we can have it fixed. Because, see, when it falls down, you see all these, I guess what you see behind a light fixture that you hide it with. And I just think Irmo High's too important to look like that. It's that one little, and it's huge. It's not like it's some little small thing. And I know you could find some money, Mr. Richardson, if the board would help me on this.
I believe Mr. Richardson been working on that very thing, Mr. Richardson.
May I?
Yeah, Mr. Cates, help me on this.
Cates, and then Ms. Gardner's discovered something else, and she's enlightened us all night, so we're coming back.
I was secretary of the Yellow Jacket Club when that project
Right.
began to find some traction, and then came off of that when I was elected to the board. That's what we commonly refer to as the St. Andrews sign, the sign that faces St. Andrews Road. The issue I believe they're having now is they have kind of exhausted their efforts to sell the advertising required to put the LED panel in the center section. And Mr. Richardson's aware of it, and we were pretty close to, I think, moving on that at one point, and it looked like they had found some traction, but I don't think so. That sign in the contract was really with the district and was never with the Yellow Jacket Club. So there's been a lot of confusion around that sign, and I would support trying to figure that out. Now, I don't know that has to be done in this 5-year campaign. That could be school identified needs. It could, quite frankly, you know much better than I do where that funding could take place. But if we were able to address that sign, and then, if they sold advertising and figure out how they would use that advertising for them to address the sign in the stadium, I think is the general consensus that I hear now that spring sports have started back. I'll hear on a daily basis as I'm at Irmo High School as a baseball dad.
Ms. Gardner.
Thank you. Since you guys opened the floodgates about specific things, I do have a question about Chapin High School. There's, it gets dark before 5 o'clock, and all of our kids are being picked up at the cafeteria after 6, and there are no lights in that parking lot, and there haven't been for years, but I just wonder where it would fall. Would it be in a 5-year plan? Would it be it's probably too expensive for school identified needs. But none of those lights work, and I think that's a safety issue. But that might be something too for the full assessment, but I just wondered what your comment on where it would land, because people ask me all the time, and I don't know.
Well, if we've got no lights working in the parking lot in front of
The cafeteria, which is the pickup area.
then there's something I need to look into as far as a maintenance issue.
Supposedly, it's been like that since the renovation.
Yeah, we were over there, Nikki and I went over there, and we asked the principal about that, Michael, and he said that they would have to trench the parking lot to get lights all the way out, okay? And there's supposedly some problem with doing that, but apparently the conduit or something's been cut under there, and none of those lights out there work. And that was one of the items that he asked us.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm asking, is it even on your list? Did y'all know about it? Are you aware that this is an issue? Because they all act like everybody already knows that you're just not doing anything, but I don't know if that's
No,
true.
I am aware of a couple of lights that are affected by something that was cut, but not the entire parking lot, so that's something I need to look into.
Well, I think you raised a point there, excuse me, Mr. Gann, but a lot of times, my experience when people bring me those things, and it's like, how in the world have we not taken care of this? When you really drill down, the request never made it. There is a process for schools when they identify maintenance or capital problems, let's say, deficiencies, to bring that forward to be addressed. And oftentimes, as a parent, we think something's happening, and come to find out, it just never got initiated from whatever step one was. So I appreciate the care and diligence that y'all provide to our facilities, and you can't know every light in the district. And sometimes we don't get that information from our schools, and so I hope that now that you know about this one, that'll get resolved.
I will be taking that as an action item. Yes, sir.
Our job.
Mr. Richardson?
I was just going to say, I did meet with Michael Ames last week, and he brought that very thing up to me. I did not realize that entire lot was out, but we are going to take a look at that. And that, just to answer your question, is not something I think we probably ought to do during this capital process. That's something we ought to address as we find those kind of issues.
Yes.
Mr. Carlin, we're going to come back to you, and I remind everyone, this is our discussion. We've got plenty of time, but we will have some more looks at all this. Mr. Carlin, are we at the question time, or you got more to present?
I'm through, sir.
All right, we're questioning then. Any more questions, concern? Great.
Mr. Gann,
Yes, ma'am.
I do want to say, though, about instead of some major thing, Mr. Cates, you talked about working on the panel of that sign. I'm simply asking to fix that raggedy thing that they keep falling down. Way before we could spend a lot of money on something big.
Would you suggest a 4x8 sheet of plywood
I
painted
don't
yellow?
know. I'm not,
No.
hey, I'm not the, hey, I'm leaving that to Scott Carlin. He's the expert. But
I know Mr. Richardson and I have talked about that same sign
But really,
several times.
Mr. Gant, Dr. Hardy said the wind knocks it down. So if we could get something it looks like somebody borrowed a sheet and wrote on it and put it up there. It's really bad, and if y'all will fix that, I'll be so happy for Irma.
I promise you, the vendor is as anxious for us to address this issue, because he's tired of coming out there and having to rehang it. So
Right,
we've identified it and trust that y'all will take the steps needed to advance that issue. Thank you.
Mr. Carlin, thanks for the presentation. I know we'll have more questions as we move through the approval process in
Yes, sir.
later weeks, but any other questions before Mr. Carlin leaves? Thank you, Mr. Carlin. That'll take us to item 24, our last item of discussion tonight, 2019-2020 board meeting schedule shown in Exhibit K. That would be Mrs. Goggins.
Yes, sir. Each year, School District 5's Board of Trustees approves a board meeting schedule for the upcoming school year to accomplish the important work of this governing body. The meeting schedule features locations throughout the district, and the draft we have for you tonight includes 18 school board meetings for the 2019-2020 school year. This time, I'd like to point out features of the draft calendar you are considering. First, I would point out that July, November, and December have one meeting, which is typical annually, to account for holidays, conferences, and other conflicting events. October also has one meeting date you'll note, and that's due to fall break, which we've implemented in the school year calendar that was approved tonight to account for the likelihood of inclement weather. Finally, we will hold our August meetings, you'll see, at the district office to allow our staff all the time they need to focus on preparations for the school year. Our board meeting schedules are an opportunity for not only to complete the important work of the board, but also for us to showcase the students and our schools. With that, I'd answer any questions you have.
Questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Goggins. There may be some in a future meeting. Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of our discussion agenda. I'd like to point out to the public and publicly that we do have a public information meeting on Elementary School 13, which will take place on January 24th. Also, at our next meeting of this board, we will have scheduled the Derrick Pond Road information. Ms. Hammond,
Thank you.
our attorney was not available tonight, but will be available for the 28th. That's scheduled.
Thank you.
Also, you're very welcome. Also, on February the 11th, the architect informs us that as of February 1st, he will be 100% complete with schematic designs, and as they're phasing of the project, that is phase 1, he's planning to be with us at our February 11th meeting. So all dates and times to look forward to. So with that, I would just say that I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. White,
I'll make a motion we adjourn.
and do we have a second? Ms. Hutchison seconds. And all those in favor, please raise your hand, and that passes unanimously. Thank you, staff. Thank you, those folks that stayed with us, and we appreciate your input.
Tech